One of the things I love about so many indie games is that they often ask the question, what if? In Genesis Noir, the developers asked, what if we told the story of space and time but used an abstract, interactive visual narrative to do it? In Pyre, they asked, what if we combined the RPG and sports genres by turning a battle system into a strategic game of fantasy basketball? And in Laika, Aged Through Blood, they asked, what if we transformed Excitebike into a twin-stick Metroidvania with Western and post-apocalyptic themes starring a bloodthirsty pack of dogs out for revenge against the oppressive forces of their aviary enemies? Like many of you, I too have asked this exact question. And we finally get to know the answer, because Laika is exactly all of those things combined into one crazy, good-looking, weird indie gaming package. Laika Aged Through Blood is a game that needs to be on people's radars. It's rare that we see such a seemingly disparate concoction of ideas come together into a title that looks fantastic and plays really well. This game is a self-described motorvania, a subgenre title that I can't decide if I absolutely love or if I think it should be wiped from the face of the planet. But what this really means is that you play as a vigilante dog that rides a dirt bike around this fantasy western-inspired world, exploring new areas and cracking down on the ruthless killer birds that want to destroy you and your family. In the demo for Laika, you'll experience all of the things that this game has thrown together into its melting pot of gaming ideas. We've got the Metroid-inspired map design, the unorthodox mode of travel, the transformation of typically comforting animals into dark and gritty characters, the use of both Western and post-apocalyptic art styles, the addition of side quests and RPG systems, the unapologetically heavy storyline, and the impressive thing about this game is that it manages to pull all of those seemingly distant components together, resulting in some of the best-looking 2D acrobatic exploration I have ever seen. It's easy to look at the motorvania piece of this game and assume that this is just a gimmick to make Laika stand out from the sea of other Metroidvanias out there. It certainly accomplishes that goal, but there's much more to it than that. Your motorbike is the central piece that makes this game go, implementing a control style that will feel familiar to fans of games like the Trials series, and completely unfamiliar to everyone else. It is a clear distinction from other games in this genre, and it's also the very first thing that players will either love or hate about this game, because the controls are not anything close to what you might be used to in other 2D action platformers. In fact, nearly every part of the control scheme in Laika is unorthodox compared to what we normally see. Rather than simply using the control stick to move your character, you get around by accelerating your bike the same way you would in a racing game. But unlike Excitebike or Trials, where you're typically going in one direction the entire time, in Laika you of course have to change directions, which you do with a slick drift move that reverses your orientation from left to right. The left stick is instead used to control the way in which your bike tilts or rotates, depending on if you're on the ground or in the air. There's no jump button, you simply have to rely on the level's terrain to catch some air when you need to. And you aim your weapons with the right control stick, which is pretty standard except for the fact that you'll almost always be moving and rotating while you're aiming, which makes even this feel pretty unnatural at times. You also don't have a button for reloading weapons or skills. This can only be done by performing flips mid-air. So initially, this unfamiliar and unruly control scheme doesn't seem to mesh well with the precise movements and actions that this style of game is known to demand of players. But as you slowly get more comfortable operating it, the game's ceiling for intricate movement becomes apparent. Riding through this fantastic world, pulling off flips and taking out enemies in bullet time as you fly past them, lining up jumps and perfectly drifting into your landing as you change directions, adeptly dodging incoming projectiles while anticipating and setting up your next approach, it's all really satisfying to pull off, and ultimately there's some really wild things you'll be able to do here with this movement scheme. I mean, I certainly didn't do those things. I mostly just died a lot. But some people are going to be able to do that, and it's going to be fun to watch. Laika's combination of stylish art direction and unique gameplay mechanics opens up a wealth of creative options for these developers to play around with. In this game, the environments are not just something you traverse. They're an ally that you partner with to assist you in every move. Tree branches become launch pads, seemingly benign road bumps become opportunities to reload, and inverted pathways become entry points for unexpected attacks on opponents. There's just a ton of potential here for inspired level design that utilizes this pattern of gameplay, and there may be no better example of this than Laika's boss fights, which feature unique situations that are specific to this game's high-flying action. Like here, where we have to use this monstrosity's bulldozer bucket against itself by turning it into a ramp and shooting down on it from high above. One part of the gameplay here that seems a little confounding at first is the fact that you want speed to be a big part of the experience. You want to cruise through every area with reckless abandon, smashing through waves of enemies as your momentum never slows. But you won't be doing that, at least not right away. The truth is, Laika has more in common with Dark Souls than Sonic the Hedgehog in this regard. Encounters with enemies are set up as deliberate scenes to be acted out as you progress from point to point across the map, and most of these encounters are pretty difficult, particularly if you want to complete them with any sense of grace or style. You'll likely die quite a bit, which means you'll be replaying engagements multiple times, making slight adjustments to your movement and decisions, and then combining those adjustments with real-time quick reflexes and combinations of button presses. You need to learn with every death so that you know what to expect and how to do better next time. But then when you do finally get it figured out, the result is a stylish scene of blood and gore that feels incredibly satisfying to execute correctly. Which is a great segue to another one of Laika's unexpected components. This game is dark, and it wastes absolutely no time in making sure you're aware of that fact, as within the first 3 opening lines of the intro, a cute little puppy dog tells you that her cousin was crucified with his own guts. What the fuck? The story in Laika starts as a classic Western revenge plot that finds you going after a group of sadistic birds who not only killed your nephew, but also seem to be plotting and planning to eliminate everyone in your doggo community. These two groups of animals hate each other, and the opening scenes in Laika put you on a vigilante-like journey to take down your enemies one by one with absolutely no mercy. But Laika, the character, is also nuanced in her emotions towards this whole ordeal, both motivated to protect her family at all costs, but also exhausted by the endless fighting that's affected her community for years. Combat scenes are violent and over the top, with enemies flying into the air as you blast away at them, leaving your character completely covered in blood. Even the currency in this game steers into this theme, as you won't be collecting gold or credits or any normal form of money, but instead you gather the viscera left behind by your slain enemies, and use this gruesome resource to later purchase items and upgrades. Your character wears a fucking literal skull helmet while she's patrolling the desert lands hunting for birds to kill. So yeah, there's a lot of mature elements to this game, and the developers have found a way to establish all of that while also implementing a really good-looking hand-drawn art style that you wouldn't immediately associate with these darker narrative tones. Characters, environments, and animations all look great here, and the visual style lends itself really well to the more fantasy-like aspect of the game's many unique settings. In the demo alone, you'll go from traveling through a classic dusty desert, to venturing deep into an underground hideout bored into the earth, to meandering through your character's hometown, a cozy patchwork of cobbled together houses and structures. In general, the art direction is exceptional here, and its counterpart in the sound department also delivers with a soundtrack that features several contemporary tracks that perfectly fit the game's Western themes, while also providing a more modern feel. The use of songs with lyrics is a risky choice for a game like this, but these tracks are emotive and beautifully composed, so I hope that the full game contains enough of them that they won't feel too repetitive as we sink more time into exploring it. As a nice perk, the game's songs can also be discovered in cassette tapes hidden throughout the world, which allows you to switch tracks at any time in the menu. That's a cool touch to include, especially for just a demo. And actually, that's one of the things that really impressed me with this preview of the game. There's a lot of content here, including 2 seemingly full areas of the map, each with their own boss fight, as well as side quests, weapon upgrades, crafting, and a lot of optional interactions with the many NPCs you'll come across. It's certainly more than the developers needed to show to get people interested in the game, but I think in this case that was an intentional move to show us that Laika is very much intended to be much more than simply a few hours of riding and shooting through a collection of cool looking levels. There's a fully fleshed out game behind this, with a well thought out setting and world, RPG-like methods for progressing your character, and a deep system of movement and combat that will undoubtedly take a while to master. And truthfully, this could be something that holds Laika back from larger audiences. Because of its unfamiliar controls and steeper learning curve, I could understand some players not wanting to openly explore a full Metroidvania-style map here, or not caring about completing side quests, or not showing interest in its grim Western storyline. It is going to be more arduous to accomplish these things in this game compared to others built from the same framework. And in this sense, Laika might have proved to be more accessible as a classic level-based side-scroller, or even a collection of bite-sized challenges that split the action up into more succinctly manageable pieces. But here's the thing. Yes, Laika would work pretty well in a more traditional format like this. It could have taken the Trials formula and added some combat and a unique look. It could have been a modern and gory version of Excitebike, but those would be different games, and they wouldn't be the game that Brainwash Gang wants to make here. These developers clearly have big ambitions and a vision to make Laika a truly unique experience. Imagine if Supergiant was content to ship Hades as a traditional action roguelike, nixing its thoughtful storytelling system that ultimately pushed the entire genre forward. Imagine if It Takes Two conceded to the idea of including a single-player mode, eliminating the very thing that added another layer to its co-op focused structure. Laika is certainly not making any concessions to appease mainstream audiences, and I kinda like that. It's certainly going to alienate a few people in the process, or at the very least prevent them from wanting to see what the whole game has to offer. But I think that's a risk worth taking to build a game with ambitions like this, especially one that so far seems to be making all the right moves to piece it together. That's why after spending a solid amount of time with the game's demo, I get the feeling that we're getting something pretty special here for those willing to dive into it. Laika, Aged Through Blood, has already proven that despite combining such a diverse set of influences, systems, and styles, it is still somehow a game that knows exactly what it wants to be. And I'm excited to see how that unyielding identity is revealed when the full game is released. If you want to check out the demo for Laika, Aged Through Blood for yourself, I'll leave a link to the game's Steam page in the description below. Give it a shot, stick with it if you can, and let me know what you think. And if you want to see more takes on upcoming games from indie developers, I do these previews pretty regularly, so make sure you subscribe so you'll see when the next one goes live.